Hi, everyone. It's Emeka Nnadi here, the president of the Nadi Group. I have a really exciting topic to share with you today. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Orlando and I was teaching a seminar on how to develop or expand campgrounds, RV parks, or glamping resorts. And I thought rather than giving you a kind of a boring old talk, I'd record the presentation and share it with all of you. I'm really excited to share this, and I hope you find value in it. This is part one of a two-part series that I'll be showing on how to develop campgrounds or recreational facilities. This first one is specifically talking about campground or brand new development, greenfield development as we call it, of campgrounds or RV resorts or glamping facility. The second part will talk about repositioning, refurbishing, reconfiguring, redeveloping an existing asset to optimize it for the market, for profitability, and for customer comfort. In both cases, we're very diligently looking at the return on investment and at the business proposition of your facility. So without further ado, let's get into it. So essentially, this slide deck is going to be talking about due diligence. In our work, we know that due diligence is key, and very thorough, detailed analysis, assessment, and due diligence in harmony with really well-designed facilities is your recipe for success. One of the key parts of due diligence is having a clear understanding of the planning and zoning ordinances, the rules and expectations. You've probably heard this before, but trying to develop a greenfield resort in an area that isn't already zoned for it, or in an area where there is a lot of NIMBY mentality, not in my backyard mentality towards zoning, could be the death kiss of your project even before it starts. It's not unheard of for folks to take over 2 years to get a property zoned appropriately for their resort or their RV campground ventures. So you really should know what you're up against ahead of time. And that's what the slide means when it says make sure the dream is possible. Make sure that the rezoning or the dedication of the entitlement is possible before you get too far ahead of yourself. And you don't have to go through the rezoning process. You just have to be aware that it is possible and viable, and you're working with a county or a municipality that is somewhat supportive. The next thing that is critically important is putting together the right team. Who do you need? None of us is an island, and none of us can do it all. So let's talk about who you might need to make your dream a reality. So in no particular order, I believe, and we believe, you need a competent industry consultant. You need to understand the feasibility of your project. You need to understand its market and competitive analysis. Ideally, you need to have a really good grasp of what the financial modeling is telling you, and perhaps even what the operational financial modeling is telling you. So you need a consultant who understands the market and can give you a very clear-eyed assessment of what is going to go into your project and what you need to do to be successful. In tandem with that feasibility analyst or market analyst, you need a very specific type of land planner, master planner, architect, designer. I often say that people don't come to resort facilities because of the amazing infrastructure that's underground, the sewer, the water, etc. They come for the experience. And only a very competent designer can give you and can create that experience for your guests and do it efficiently and financially viably. So you need someone who knows how to do this stuff. Sometimes, depending on where you're at with the rezoning struggle, it might be a good idea to consult with a local real estate attorney, someone who understands local politics, local laws, and perhaps has gone to bat for previous developers similar to you in trying to get a project rezoned. Further down the line, once you're at the point where it's time to do construction, an industry-specific engineer is critical. And I say industry-specific because civil engineers are highly competent and highly specialized engineers. And if you get an engineer who is not familiar with how to lay infrastructure in a resort facility very efficiently, the chances are you're going to overspend and have your project be over-designed or over-engineered. And that could also be the kiss of death for your project. Lining up an industry-specific civil engineer who is working off the visionary master plan of the land planner is critical to your success. Getting into the details, you need an architect or a design team that can identify opportunities and can design specifically to your market area and your niche. Things like bathhouse facilities, the clubhouse, entertainment venues, potentially hotel facilities that are being developed in tandem with the RV or the glamping component, and any other fixed items of development. This is important to complete the vision and complete the brand. So you don't just need anyone, you need someone who understands what it is you're trying to do. And of course, if you don't have the expertise in-house, it would be ideal to get an industry-specific operator, someone who can operate your park or who can train your staff in the highest and best techniques for operating a resort facility effectively. So that's just a quick summary. Sometimes you don't need all of these, but this is a quick summary of some of the critical consultants that you might need on your team. For the purposes of this part one presentation, we're just going to focus on the first three of those 6 potential team members or consultants that you need. So we're talking about a feasibility analyst or a market analyst. We're talking about a land planner or a master planner to create the high-level vision, and potentially a rezoning expert or a real estate attorney that has local knowledge. So to pull all these abstract ideas together, what I showed in Orlando and what I'd like to show to you is this case study project. So this is an actual drone image of the project at hand. This is called the Lakes RV and Cabin Resort, and the address is on the screen. It's 100 Lakes Boulevard, Maysville, North Carolina. And we were engaged in tandem with a specific market analyst company to provide all of the initial design consulting, all of the feasibility and market analysis, and all of the architectural work that precluded the civil engineering and the construction work. As is our process, the very first thing we did was to conduct a site analysis. A site analysis takes all of the physical components of the property and assesses them honestly and candidly to make sure that nothing is overlooked, to identify opportunities for really great design and to really push up your brand and push up your marketability, but also to highlight potential conflicts, issues, challenges to development. We typically look at topography, hydrology. We'll look at the zoning ordinance or any bylaws that are in effect. We will look at the site's physical vegetation and identify opportunities to celebrate the vegetation. We'll look at soil quality, and we'll look at floodplain information such as FEMA. Those are a few of the items that we would typically look at. In this particular example, if you can see, the yellow patches on the site are areas where the topography is too steep for RV site development. And there's not a whole lot of them. Most of those steep areas are around the lakes. So Misty Morning Lake, Cypress Lake, and the White Oak Lake, these are actually abandoned stone quarries that filled with groundwater and became very deep, but also very beautiful lake bodies. You can see by the hatched pattern on top of the lakes what FEMA has identified as floodplain area. Now the floodplain area moves all the way towards the right side of the page, towards the south of the property, and all of the land mass in that southern end is in a floodplain area, which means you can't build any permanent structures on there. And you can see for the rest of the site, the topography is generally smooth and gently undulating and poses no risk to development. While this site analysis is being undertaken, the rest of the team is simultaneously working on market research. So this slide just shows the range that we look outwards to in terms of looking at competitors, competing resorts, competing facilities, or others that might be in other related market niches, but not specifically what you're trying to do. And the idea behind here is the local market is typically divided into 50-mile radii or radiuses. So within the first 50-mile radius, there is a really local market. And any competing facility within the 50-mile radius is something that we would study in a lot of detail, identifying things like their nightly rates or their business profile. Are they extended stay or are they short-term recreational? And then after the 50 miles, we go to the local market, step 2 or phase 2, which is within the 100-mile radius, and we look at what they're doing there. Outside of the 100-mile radius, it becomes more of a regional analysis of markets 150 and 200 miles. But we will go out as far as a 200-mile radius to assess any and all potential competition, to look at median income levels, to look at sort of the number of homes that own RV vehicles, recreational vehicles, or who are investing in recreational amenities such as what you're trying to put out here. And that composite gives a really clear picture of who you're marketing to. Typically, outside of a 200-mile radius, the return for the market tends to drop off and is really not that relevant. So once we put together the site analysis alongside the market analysis, we're ready to assemble a bit of a business case. So this slide is an example of where we assemble a business case that identifies what the niche ought to be. So in this case, in terms of amenities and recreational facilities, we're suggesting the project would benefit from having a basketball court, having a bocce court, cornhole tossing, horseshoe, probably a number of pickleball courts, etc., etc. So we identify in this matrix all the amenities that would position the development ideally for success. Up on top, you can see that we spread the potential amenities into 3 phases, phases 1, 2, and 3, just to show that you don't have to capitalize or invest in everything all at once up front. So this composite, as well as a deeper dive into the financials of the project, are things that the physical site analysis and the market study bring to the table and really help you hone in on the opportunity that your project would yield. This is a snapshot from, of course, the Lakes on the White Oak project that we're talking about today. Now, once all of that is put together, we generate a first exceptionally rough, high-level bubble diagram. So it's a master plan light. The important pieces to the bubble diagram are that we can identify in big, bubbly clusters what the different land uses might be. So in this diagram, anywhere you see the red pattern, that's dedicated to recreational use. So non-vehicular recreational use, like trails, like fishing, like canoeing, etc., etc. Anywhere you see the gray color, that area is dedicated to cabins or park models. And you can see that areas that have slightly steeper topography in this example are great for park model installation or park model development, because it doesn't have to be as flat as it needs to be for an RV site. The big star of asterisk right in the middle of that red area is where we propose the clubhouse to be. The clubhouse would be great in that location because it gives you an immediate access to Misty Morning Lake, but also it has really good visibility to the entry of the resort. So that combination and being perched right where it is a real opportunity to showcase the brand of this development. The black lines, of course, are roadways, and in this bubble diagram, we're showing a major drive that leads you right up to the clubhouse through it all. And lastly, the yellow and the salmon colors are different bubbles, yellow representing pull-through sites and the salmon representing back-in sites. The great thing about a bubble diagram is that it doesn't cost a lot, doesn't take a ton of effort, but it really starts to structure where land uses go in your project. And with our software, we're able to calculate fairly accurately what the density of each of those bubbles will be. So at this stage, we're able to extract actual numbers: how many RV sites, how many park models, how many pull-through sites versus back-end sites, et cetera, et cetera. And that gives a really great early warning signal, or really great early information to you as the developer or your banking or your investors on what this thing might look like or might pencil like when it's done. As part of that bubble diagram exercise, we get into visioning or visualizing. So these images are simply visioning images for what could be. The clubhouse image in the middle there is simply suggesting what architectural styling or what the experience of the clubhouse by the lake could be. And just imagine the late misty morning lake being right behind that. There's an example of a few pull-through sites. There's examples of tent camping that would happen in the floodplain area where no permanent structures can be built. There's an example of a potential park model that would try to piggyback off of or emulate the clubhouse design. And there's one of many different versions of glamping. The bubble diagram exercise continues with visioning. This is another slide of visioning stuff. So those lakes are small enough that you probably don't want to have motorized boating on there, but canoeing and other forms of either small motor or non-motorized boating and fishing could happen on those lakes. The amenities, of course, could include trailways for either cyclists, mountain bikers, or just hiking. And the comfort stations or bathhouses would also mimic or piggyback off of the architectural style of things like the clubhouse. So we put all this together and you can see what's happening. We're tracking the project from a market assessment and viability perspective in parallel with a design perspective. So what is being designed in real time is being critiqued and vetted for marketability and for feasibility simultaneously. So finally, when all those pieces start to come together, we have a master plan. And the master plan isn't just a simple regurgitation of the bubble diagram. As you can see, if you look at this master plan, the direct drive that goes in from the entry and all the way to the clubhouse has been removed. So we removed that as we refined the master plan because it became unnecessary in terms of vehicular circulation, and removing it also increased the overall density or yield of the project. A few other details in this master plan diagram are that if you notice, the park models run along the perimeter of much of the property. The brown rectangles, the brown park model rectangles, are ideally park models for sale or lot sales. And there are yellow park models that are designed to be tucked in a lot closer to the lakes. And those are intended to be the rental portfolio. So the combination of for sale and for rent is part of the assessment that came out of the market and the feasibility analyses that occurred, making this project resilient and reliable both ways. You can also see that there's a row of pull-through sites, if you follow my mouse cursor, and a large body of back-end sites right in front of the clubhouse. Over in the interior, where it's treed and forested, and also where it's in the floodplain, we have an amenity for boat storage and other recreational activities. And everywhere you see a number 7, if you can read that, those are bathhouses or clubhouses. So by the time we got to the master plan and refined it to this level, we had actually increased density by another 70 or 80 sites from what we had calculated in the bubble diagram. So this master plan is a critical piece of the work that we do. If you haven't achieved full entitlements or rezoning up until this point, the master plan is an exceptionally solid tool or instrument for getting you there. This is something that can explain the concept visually to anybody, a planner, a politician, anybody who is awarding your entitlements. to understand exactly what it is you're doing. A master plan is a living document, so even though it looks like it's set in stone, it also allows you to pivot and adapt slightly as you get into the development process. All the time reserving or conserving the vision that you started off with. Up in the front of the master plan, I forgot to mention, there's a check-in station with multi-laned pull-throughs for check-in and a return lane in case somebody lost their way and got into the wrong spot. There's also parking lots for people coming in to inquire about park model purchases, and there's a couple of sample park models up in front for people to check out and test without getting into the actual resort. A really well thought out, a really detailed master plan, and this is something that you really want to have in hand and have the confidence of knowing that your project is viable. So how do you build this? This project would be impossible to build in one foul swoop, in one phase, and certainly even if you could afford to do it, it wouldn't make any sense because the market would not absorb what you're generating that quickly. So in order for the project to actually pencil, we divide or break up the project into phases. In this particular phasing diagram, we've broken the project up into 5 phases, and the decision to put certain phases where they are isn't just random. It's actually designed around how construction occurs and how construction equipment egresses and how construction might reoccur in phase 2, so as not to disrupt the quiet enjoyment of the users in phases 1. If you look at the phasing diagram that we have in front of you here, each phase is labeled with the amenities and the number of sites that would go into each phase. Year 1 or phase 1 would provide 25 pull-through sites, 30 back-in sites, 79 park model sites, 1 comfort station or bathhouse, 1 playground, a series of entry features, and the check-in building we talked about, as well as other amenities worked into the check-in building. So that's phase 1, and that on its own becomes your first viable proof of concept and your first viable part of the project. The phasing is really important, and what happens is from phase to phase, because it's a master plan that has flexibility built into it, you're able to pivot and adapt and tweak as you get from one phase to the other. Having said that, your financial modeling is also adaptable and responsive to market realities. So we recommend a 5 to 10 year financial model. Site and rental revenue is the basis for a sound model. When you're looking at site and rental revenue, we're looking at things like seasonality, the number of sites, the different rental types, extended stay or short-term recreational, the rental periods. Are you renting by the night, by the month, seasonally, annually, etc.? The actual dollar rates, the rate increases each year alongside inflation or other things, and the occupancy by site type and season. So all of those things go into the financial model that you want to see. Now, additional revenue is always additional. So don't ever do a plan where you assume that the golf cart rentals or the clubhouse amenity building rental or any of those other things like food truck, shared income, etc. are part of your core business. Always consider those to be additional revenue and not the basis for making the decision to do the development. And of course, at this early stage, you need to pencil in operational expenses, construction costs, and financing terms, because any one of those things not well considered could spell disaster for your project. So the financial modeling working in tandem, like I said earlier, with the design process is critical to the success of your development. Let's talk a little bit about theming and architecture. So there's many styles and many themes for the buildings that you might put in your resort. In broad brush strokes, there's things from super modern themes to super traditional. You can see a very ultra modern glass and sort of dark wood charcoal park model on the left, and what most of us know to be a park model, a very traditional park model on the right, with the hipped roof on the traditional side, usually a 612 or lower, with a front porch that's covered and often with a bay window, etc., etc. Deciding on who the manufacturer is and the supplier, etc., will have to do with distance from your resort, as well as the style or the theme that you're going for in your resort. There's also contemporary themes, which is traditional meeting modern. That's on the left here, which is my personal favorite, but I'm not biased. And there's rustic themes like this log house cabin or timber cottage. Now, this is an example of a clubhouse building that we actually designed. I'll speak more about this project in my part 2. So this particular project was not part of the Lakes on the White Oak project that I've been talking about so far, but this is just an example of the level of detailing that is being expected now in mid to high level glamping and RV resort developments. We designed this just for a project in Florida. So in this particular example, the client wanted a Spanish themed clubhouse. And you can see how with the combination of the metal roofs and the high stone and certain sort of Spanish influenced arches, we were able to achieve that look on this project. These are some 3-dimensional renderings that we completed the project with, and you can see the cabanas and you can see the multiple swimming pools and hot tub as part of the development in this project. So as we get more sophisticated in the development of greenfield RV campgrounds and resorts, this level of pre-construction visioning and visualization is critical to being able to explain the project and being able to market it effectively even before you turn a shovel. So people really understand what your value proposition is ahead of time, and you're able to respond to what the market is telling you. Now, moving through and past the architectural, theming, and design world, one of the last services that firms like ours provides in the continuum of resort design and development is the CAD documentation. So this is one part of the CAD documentation for the entire project. And what this type of document does is this bridges the gap between designer and engineer. So an engineer needs to receive the intent of design without mucking it up. He needs to receive black line, hard line, firm design intent, and a CAD file does that typically. So this view is simply a CAD file of the master plan. On the basis of this, the engineer can proceed and do detailed engineering for the road construction, for the utilities, and other forms of infrastructure. This particular drawing is of the overall project with in total 591 sites. But remember when we phased the work? The next few slides are an example of the detail that firms like ours would get into in terms of detailing for each phase. So this is phase 1 up in the top left corner. This is all of phase 1. And in the detailing that we do, we provide the ability to lay out the trenches, red for electricity, blue for water, and green for sewer. We lay out the utility lines and provide the hookup locations for park models on the one hand and pull-through sites on the other hand. This big view here is just a section of phase 1. And the details on the right are details for the park models and the back-end sites. So this really takes the visioning of the master plan to a really detailed level, and it provides precision and accuracy in terms of how each of the sites gets laid out. That's my presentation for this first part. If you know us, you already know how to reach us, but on the screen here is some contact information for me and for my team at the Nadi Group. Thanks for listening. I really enjoyed sharing this case study with you, and I hope you found it valuable. If you did find it, like us, follow us, and you can certainly reach out to us via our website or any other means to have a chat. Look out for part 2. In part 2, we'll be talking about repositioning, reconfiguring, and redeveloping an existing park and the do's and don'ts there. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you very shortly. Thanks.